Thank you for joining us in this video, which is the second part of the interview with the most successful female randonneer at the Paris-Brest-Paris with a record number of completions. In this video, she gives us insight as to how the Paris-Brest-Paris has evolved over the years and why it has evolved in that way. I hope that you enjoy watching this video as much as I have enjoyed producing it. When you ride the Paris-Brest-Paris, do you focus on achieving a certain average speed, or how do you pace yourself along the Paris-Brest-Paris?
Well, I think about realistically where I should be sleeping, where I want to sleep, where I think I can get to. And I usually make a schedule for myself, where I want to get to. And I often have a schedule for the slowest time I want to be moving at, to try and make sure I'm out of the controls by the slowest time. I've never been a fast rider. I'm more interested in being comfortable and enjoying myself. So yeah, I try and think about where I'm going to sleep and then go from there. And I don't really look at my speed as much as am I getting to the controls on time, and I try to ride steadily and a speed that's good for me.
What is the most popular time that you've chosen to start at, and where would you plan your first sleep, taking that into consideration?
I've always gone with a 90-hour group, and before then they used to start us at 10 o'clock. They'd have about 3 huge waves. So now it's more spread out, which I like. It's safer. But the trouble with the 5 o'clock start is the obvious place for me to sleep would be Ludiac. But Ludiac, if you like, the tandem group started at 5:15 and Ludiac closed at something like 11:30 at night or 11:45 for our group. So that meant you'd be cycling through the night again. And I don't like cycling, it's slower riding at night. So the last couple of times when we started at that time, I was on my single in 2019, and we stayed at a place just before Paris-Brest-Paris, because then we didn't have to get up quite as early. We got up at 3:30 instead of we would have had to get up probably at 11:15 at Ludiac to get out of there, or earlier. I like on PBP, I like to have an hour buffer with the time limit. When I'm at home, I don't mind leaving on the time limit, but PBP I want to finish, for sure. So I usually make sure I have at least an hour buffer. So to have an hour buffer, if you have to get out of Ludiac at 11:45, means you're leaving at 10:45 at night, and it doesn't make sense. So we went further, but with Nigel, because I can ride a lot faster with Nigel, we went to Sizoon, which is at 5:75, and we got there at 11:15 at night, and we left again at 5:30 in the morning. So then we were back riding in daylight. But if I was on my single, it would have been hard. I probably would have been riding right through that night again, because I'm getting quite slow. So it's a kind of complicated answer there. If they started me if we were able to start in the morning, I'd kind of want, think about going to sleep at 11 at night or something. And we looked at starting in the morning, but our hotel was about 22 kilometers from the start. So you want to give yourself at least an hour to get there. You want to be there probably half an hour in advance. And so that means you have to leave at 3:30 in the morning. And that means you're getting up at 2:30 in the morning. And we just thought, if you're getting up at 2:30 in the morning, you might as well go right through the night.
So if I understand, so you would start, like, for example, this time you started at 5:15 in the afternoon on Sunday, and you rode to Sunday night, and then into the whole of Monday day and into Monday night, and then you stayed at Corhay Plugier. Oh no,
we stayed at Sizun.
Sizun.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you got to Sizun at about what time on Monday evening?
11:15 at night.
11:15. How long did you sleep for, and what time did you start riding again?
We started riding again at 5:30 in the morning.
5:30. So you might have had about at least a 4-hour or 3 hours sleep. Is that right?
I'd say we had 5 hours sleep.
When you make up your schedule, you say you try to make sure that you're at least an hour before the cutoff time for each checkpoint.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. So I think it gives us some idea as to how to pace for this really demanding event.
I'm not usually chasing a time either. I want to be comfortable.
So that 1 hour buffer is just to make sure that you get there and that you have enough time, just in case there is some kind of mechanical issue or other problem. At least you have an hour buffer ahead of the cutoff times. Is that right?
Yes, because these days you have a good idea where the secret controls are. But before, we didn't know where they were going to be, and you had to be through the secret controls at least in the minimum time. Now, often people are out of time when they go through the intermediate controls, but the organizers give them credit so long as they finish in their time limit. They're not as stringent about people getting to the control on time. But if you're slow, like before, I would have thought that's fine, I can catch up. But now I'm getting slower. If I'm behind time, it's much harder for me to catch up. I don't want to be behind time. So
yeah. That in the past, at the checkpoints, they were a lot more strict about you getting there on time. If you didn't make, is it 2 successive checkpoints on time, they would ask you to withdraw. Is that right?
Probably, yeah. It was easier for them to tell because at first we all started at the same time, so they knew that you were late. Yeah. But okay. Now there's so many different start times, they don't really know whether you're on time or not.
Okay, yes, so it's more difficult for them to work that out. Okay, so that's one aspect, but then maybe they also try to encourage people to also try to at least finish the event itself.
I think so. I think it's good.
Have the checkpoints changed much over the past 10 editions? Were they much simpler in the past, and are they much more complex now? Do they have more facilities? And what is your experience with checkpoints?
They haven't changed that much over the years, but I think the first couple of times where where they actually call the control, where you get your card signs, there was quite long lineups at first, but now when you go and get your card signed, there's no lineups, that you're in and out pretty quickly. This time Nigel and I were kind of ahead of the bulge of most riders, so we didn't have to wait for food. So sometimes in the past there were quite big lineups for food. I have a feeling it's not too bad now, because the riders are more spread out with the much, as I said, at first there was only one start time for the 90-hour group, and several thousand riders would start at once. Then they'd let us go in 500 at a time, but now it's so spread out from 5:30 until 9 o'clock at night. I think it relieves the pressure at the controls. Sleeping at one control, they didn't have Vilaine the first time. I should have looked up the name of the town, but the control was in this town, and we slept there, and it was in a school, and they had hay in the classrooms, and you just buried yourself in the hay to sleep. I'm trying to think how they've changed. They haven't changed a lot. They have, but they've managed to provide services to a bigger crowd now, I think, by spreading out the start. There can be quite long lineups for the toilets too, for instance. If you're with the bulge, if you're with the bulge, it can really slow you down. Lining up, waiting to get a bed in the dorm too. So
spreading out the riders has made such a big difference in terms of being able to maintain the facility, so that they're hopefully a little bit better for the success for the late riders coming in the bulge.
I haven't talked to many. I don't know how people did whether that was still a problem or not, but I have a feeling it's not quite as bad.
You know, people that I spoke to said that the route has changed quite a bit, both in terms of the route that has been followed from previous editions, as well as the amount of elevation. What was your experience like? Has it changed much over the past 10 editions?
It's always pretty similar, but the section coming back between Brest and Carré was definitely a lot hillier. It nearly always has come back over Rock Traversal, and it's a long climb, but it's not particularly steep. So for most people, that's not too bad to go over there. But the constant up and downs can get quite tiring. So we have gone out to Brest on that hilly route before, though not for a while, but we have gone out to Brest on that route, and I remember being very tired arriving in Brest. And then this time between Carré and Loudiac, I've never ridden that at all, and that was pretty hilly and into the headwind. Yes. There was some steep little pitches in there. So yeah, those two sections were definitely hillier, but I think there was a section that was a bit flatter, maybe between Tenteniac and Fougères, with slightly different routes. They did, so it's always about the same amount of climbing. It might have been a little bit more this time, but it's always very hilly.
I understand in the last two editions have started in Rambouillet, but previous to that, it was in Saint-Quentin and Yvelines. But did you start in other towns prior to that as well?
In 87, we started right on the edge of the city of Paris itself, right near the Seine, right near the Bois de Boulogne in Paris. And they had to have a police escort for the riders for probably at least 50 kilometers coming into town, which I guess is why they changed it. But you felt like you were riding the Tour de France because all the people were lined up on the sides of the roads as you went through. And that was just the once. And then they moved out to Saint-Quentin, and the facilities were good because Rambouillet, it's all tents. So if it was raining, I'm not sure how good it would have been. But again, especially coming back into Saint-Quentin, there were a lot of traffic lights, and often riders are coming in at, rush hour, 8 o'clock in the morning, and they're tired and going through all light after light. But that's one thing I really like about Rambouillet. You're on the country roads, and coming back in, there's no worry about, like, people on the time limit and they're stopping at light after light after light. It gets quite stressful for them. So I like Rambouillet. The thing I don't like about Rambouillet is it's such a long way from the airport. And every time, like this time, we had the tandem in the 2 suitcases. And on the way there, we took the RER, the trains, and then the suburban train. But I think changed trains 3 times. We're on 3 different trains, and it took a couple of hours. But a taxi was going to be over 200 euros. So on the way back, we found someone to share an Uber with, which is 150 euros, which is still $225 divided by 3. That part is always hard, getting from the airport to wherever you're staying. But I like the Rambouillet start because you're immediately out of the traffic, out of the no traffic lights, and you're off and running. And the same coming back in. It's coming, but you're at the finish. All of a sudden, you're at the finish.
It's only with experience and insight that you can actually see the benefits of Rambouillet compared to starting in the middle of Paris itself.
In 2019, our club was more organized, and we all stayed at Maurepas, about 20 kilometers east of Rambouillet. I think we'd rather stay in Rambouillet. And this time I tried to get a block of rooms, but I was too late. But I knew we stayed at the Mercure in Moulder Park, and I booked there this time because I knew they would keep the bike boxes and store our luggage and everything. But next time, I think our club will try and get on it a much sooner and try and find a place in Rambouillet so everyone can stay together. And this time we were all scattered everywhere, and it was a real shame because afterwards everyone wants to get together and share their stories, and that didn't happen because we weren't at the same place. Usually there's such a big party afterwards, and we missed that.
This year I noticed they didn't collect the brevet cards, because I understand in previous editions they would collect them and then verify them and then post them back to you with a medal. Is that right?
Before, they would mail us the medals engraved with our name and time on it and the card. I think it's too expensive for them to mail those medals. And also, even when they started having the chip on your bike or your shoe or wherever you had it, sometimes it didn't record. It wasn't completely accurate. So they took your card to verify in case there were discrepancies. But now I think the chips are working just about 100% of the time. So they don't need to keep the card. And I think it costs too much for them. And there's too many people. It would be such a huge volunteer effort for them to send it out. This is easier for them and keeps the prices down. I hope they keep the card. It's such a great souvenir. I think they'll keep it, is my feeling. But again, at the controls, they have a lot of volunteers stamping at the controls.
It's a beautiful tradition. So I hope they do keep it. So, and have you kept all of your 10 brevet cards?
I have them somewhere. I'm not sure where they are, but I have kept them all. I'll have to get them all together and admire them, I think.
Did you ever have the opportunity to use individual support along the route, like get somebody to second you? Or did you ever have to use a drop bag facility in any of your Paris-Brest-Paris?
I'd like to use the drop bag for sure, have a change of shorts and clothes in there, and maybe a few more spare tire and tubes in there, and a bit of extra food. I nearly always do that. One time I was riding with a friend and his wife wanted to support, so we had support that year, and she set up tents for us to sleep in, which was very helpful. Yeah. But in general, I don't think you really need support unless you're going for a time. Let me back up a bit. One of the men in our club had a camper van, and so his wife met him a couple of times with the camper van, and then you can sleep in the van, and that's a big help too, I think. 2007 was very wet.
Do you think having support on that specific event might have been quite useful?
Yes. But you can never predict what the weather's. It's not usually very wet, but I worry more and more about the heat with climate change. And, they do have heat waves in Paris, and they've never really had a heat wave, but it's coming. And I worry about that because, if people push themselves too much, they'll die in a heat wave. So the first day I was quite hot. I put a men's cotton shirt on when it's really hot because the air kind of flows through more. Everyone tells me I'm losing too many watts doing that, but I don't know. If I don't stay cool, I'm not going to be moving. On the last day, I remember sticking my head under some taps because I was getting so hot. I was getting a bit worried about how hot I was getting.
Cyclists are traditionally quite superstitious. If most cyclists will swear that they always have a certain pair of socks or a certain item of clothing or something. Do you have any specific clothing that you use?
Lately, I have gone back to wool for my over. I usually have a synthetic cycling jersey and a wool one to wear on top. Long underwear tops from my first edition. I still have those. I bring one of those every time. It still works. And no, it doesn't stink. But not really. Just I think the most important thing is having a pair of shorts that work for you.
Are there any items that you have to take with you when you ride the Paris-Brest-Paris to give you good luck?
First time I did it, they told me to make sure I brought something from the previous edition every time I did it. So I've got my long underwear top.
What about your bicycle? Has that changed very much? Have you always used, I know you rode tandem now, but I assume you've always ridden with a single bicycle in the past. Do you still have the same bicycle you used right for your very first, or did you change it many times?
I had an old Polo touring bike the first time, quite heavy. Yeah, I've changed my bike several times, and now I have a titanium bike with wider tires that I would have ridden. You know, most of us change bikes every few years and get the latest technology. I love the new disc brakes because on the West Coast here it's wet, so you can brake more easily. The trouble is when you're tired, getting your wheel in and out with disc brakes on is harder. But I have ridden tandem twice before, once with my husband and once with another friend. But this tandem was, Nigel designed the tandem and had it built in China, and then he bought all the components and put it together. It's just an absolutely beautiful bike. So I felt really privileged to ride that bike, I'll tell you.
Do you have a special kind of saddle that you use?
For quite a long time now, I've liked the Cellar Italia man saddle. And, you know, quite often my seat wears out the year before PBP, and then I'm struggling, desperately trying to find a saddle that works. But those Cellar Italias worked for me. But this time I got one, and the gel was much harder, and I've damaged my sit bones in the past, and it wasn't working. So in the end, I rode one of those infinity saddles that your bones, there's holes where your bones are. And I guess there's no perfect saddle. It was okay, and I got through the ride. But, you know, my skin peeled for about a week afterwards. And I think most people have that kind of thing too. But I didn't have saddle sores, because as soon as you have an open saddle sore, you're really in trouble.
What about your nutrition, both on the bike and off the bike? What do you take to eat on the bike, and do you eat at the controls? And what do you eat at the controls?
I eat whatever appeals to me at the controls, whatever looks appetizing that I think I can put down. And I remember at a couple of controls, we just got the pasta, and by the cash they had olive oil and Parmesan, and we just poured olive oil and Parmesan all over it and tossed it up and ate it, and it was pretty good. And yogurt, I like yogurt a lot. I usually eat some of their vegetable dishes to keep things moving. On the bike, I usually have bars. I usually have start with a sandwich on my bike and things, because when you get to Mortano-Perche after 120 kilometers, that can be quite busy still, because everyone arrives at once. So I carry some food on me over the first night, so I can go a bit further without stopping in the crowds, because after that things thin out. But mostly I eat real food. When I'm in BC, I like to start with a couple of boosts in my water bottles, 2 boosts, and then top it up with water. But I was a bit leery of that on Paris-Brest-Paris, because you really need to clean your water bottles out well after that, and you don't want anything going moldy in your water bottles. So mostly I eat real food. And I have bars on the bike to nibble on.
How did you navigate this year, and did you have any problems with your navigation?
Nigel, I forget which Garmin he has, but it beeps when the turns are coming up. I use a hiking Garmin, and it doesn't beep, but I can see the route. I can see I'm en route. It's very comforting to know you're en route. I think he looked for the markers and listened for his computer to tell him to turn. Navigation wasn't a problem at all. Previously, when the arrows were stolen. It's more a problem for the last riders coming in, and they're the riders getting close to the time limit because more and more riders have gone through and the arrows are missing. But now it's easy. There's not as many turns coming into Rambouillet. It's easier to get back in. You know, the arrows have the reflective, so to help you see it at night. At first, they didn't have that. That was a big improvement when they started having the reflective bits so that you could actually see the arrows at night more easily. When I rode tandem with my husband, we went off route. We went down this long hill and finally realized we were off route and had to go all the way back up the hill. Because the arrow was just kind of, it was ambiguous the way it was pointing. And that's another thing of riding tandem. I can't see the arrows at the back. I can't see beyond it. I can see out the sides, but I can't see in front. So I'm useless at helping look for the arrows. So
from what I understand, the record number of rides, Paris-Brest-Paris rides are 13. Is that something you would ever aim for?
I never really, not something that really motivated me. It's just that I like to ride the event. I mean, that would be for 12 years. I'm 68, I'd be 80. I just don't think it's possible for me to do it. I mean, my goals are keep cycling, keep moving more, stay healthy, and hopefully keep doing these rides for as long as I can. I think I've always thought I wanted to go back. And then the year before, I've set myself up. So I've made sure I've done the series and the 1,000 so that I can be ready. But yeah, I usually want to go right away. I know I still want to do it.
What do your family think about you doing it so many times?
They've just gotten used to it, but you know, it's pretty wacky sport. But you know, my husband hasn't ridden the rides since he did it 5 times with me. Last time he rode Brevet was 2015, and I'm lucky, you know, that, you know, I'm gone a lot training or doing rides, and often he's with me, but sometimes he's not, and I'm lucky that he's happy with that. So, you know, you have to have a family that's willing to have you out riding a bike for hours on end to do this kind of thing. So I'm really lucky about that. So yeah, they're pretty supportive.
Have you ever thought about going to ride something like the Edinburgh, London? Or have you done it already?
I haven't done it. And now looking back, I kind of think I should have done it a few years ago while I had a bit more speed. Riding on the left scares me. My butt takes a beating on the 1200s, and I've always kind of wondered if my butt would survive a 1400 or 1500. So, but LEL, the last couple of times, I come from England, and the last couple of times it's gone within about 25 meters of the house I used to live in. I thought, my God, I should have ridden that.
Have you got any advice to anybody who's going to do their very first Paris-Brest-Paris?
Well, as I said, I like to estimate where I'm going to be at certain times so I can stay on track. I actually look over the route to see which towns we're going to go through. I don't know why that helps me, but somehow it helps me do the route finding, because often in France, I use Google Street View in the controls towns to see where the grocery stores and things are and see if there's hotels and things like that. So I know if I want to pick up something at a grocery store, I can. I told you how I prepare for the cycling side of things. It takes a surprising amount of preparation to do an event like this. Getting all your clothes and food together, getting your schedule down.
So what you've told me is that first of all, you need to get as much experience in preparation for the event. Get your bicycle, your clothing, your nutrition right. And then you also have to have some kind of mental preparation, knowing exactly where you intend to sleep, as well as getting those town names in your mind, so that when you get to a point, you know, okay, my next one is this place, that, and the next place is going to be that place. So it sounds as though you can tick it off mentally and you know where you are on the schedule.
I always have brand new tires, brand new tubes, brand new cables. Everything's been tried ahead of time. Nothing, if possible, nothing new on the bike. Tried and true.
As my friend Joe would have said, you think like an airplane mechanic. You think in advance how to avoid mishaps, reduce the chances of mishaps on the ride by having everything as new and as well maintained as possible.
They tell you don't quit until you've slept and eaten and you're at the time limit. If you still, if you've got time in the bank, try and recover and then go again. Eat and sleep and go again.
Well, I want to say, talking to you has been an absolute pleasure. And I've learned so much from interviewing you. And you've had so many great insights into so many aspects of how it's evolved and the reasons why it's evolved, why the Paris-Brest-Paris has evolved. I want to say thank you so much. And I wish you all the very best with all your future randonneering.
Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. You've made it easy for me.
Thank you for joining us in the second part of the interview with the most successful female randonneer at the Paris-Brest-Paris, with a record number of successful completions. Stay tuned for more interviews with other amazing randonneers who share their knowledge and experience at the Paris-Brest-Paris, with the aim of helping you with your future attempts. Remember, if you've enjoyed this video, please press that like button, and if you would like to see more videos related to this type of interview, please subscribe to this channel. Until the next time we meet, please ride safely.